Well, hello, and welcome to the Vicar's Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories with those of a Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode, we are talking about other TV vicars. This episode, we're going to talk about Father Ted and the episode Song for Europe in preparation for the great contest of Eurovision that is happening this weekend.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hello.
And a very blessed feast of Eurovision to both of you.
And also with you.
Yes, indeed, because this episode is coming out the day before the Eurovision final, and we'll get into that in a little bit more, explaining exactly what Eurovision is and why I particularly am so excited. But before we do that, how has our week been, knowing that we're recording this about 2 weeks before Eurovision has actually started? I personally have already started to get super excited and ready for this blessed season of Eurovision. How about you, Ruthie?
Well, this week has been really quite a busy week, and it's been full of lots of good things with work stuff. So I've been working with the Archbishop of York Youth Trust, which is they're kind of connected to the group that I work with. But I've been doing something different, which has been really, really fun. So I was talking to a load of primary school pupils today about being salt and light and being good leaders in the world, and how we sort all that out. So that's been really good. And then after we finish recording, I'm off because my sister-in-law gets married on this weekend.
Yeah,
so I'm very excited about that. It's going to be good. What about you, Jenny? What have you been up to this week?
Things have been good. Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of annual items coming around at the moment. So like the big church meeting, and lots of contracts being renewed for our lay ministers, things like that. So it's been quite busy with lots of things that we do as vicars just once a year. So it's been really good, but been busy. The slightly annoying thing, I've got a problem with my tooth. A little problem that just won't go away. So that's been giving me a bit of jip. So I've been having not a super sausage week. But I've been enjoying the sunshine when it's popped up. So that's been nice. I've got to try and find the positive. Got to try and find the positive somewhere.
I love that. But maybe we should create a sausage scale for how good a week is. Like, if it's a pretty terrible week, it's a cocktail. And if it's a great week, you've got a bratwurst.
I like that. As long as I can do the corn version, I'm good.
Oh yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a tier of vegetarian sausages. We probably shouldn't name brands.
That's true.
No, we probably shouldn't.
No,
but there is one that is the best.
There is, and I think Ruthie and I we're in agreement about which is the best.
Yeah,
I feel like I'd like to taste your sausages.
Goodness me, Jenny.
I feel Vicar's Watch Dibley.
I'm a married woman.
Oh yes, when we have our gin weekend, let's make
Hallelujah.
a gin barbecue.
Yeah,
Woo!
sausage taste test. So moving on from sausages, how are you, Kate?
I'm doing well. I am, as I said, excited for the season of Eurovision, but also I had a week off last week and I did loads of projects. So I did some gardening with the help of my family. I painted my hallway and I've been hanging up some pictures. So I've been doing home decorating.
Wow.
And so I had my niece and nephew came over for a day while their dad was helping garden. And I planned some fun to do with them, which they didn't engage with in the end. But I bought a DIY board game kit. And because they decided that they didn't want to do this, I did it myself. And I started a Dibliopoly board, which is an ongoing project.
Yes.
I am so excited about this. And we are currently planning meeting up at some point, and I believe Dibliopoly will be played.
It's a must.
The creative energy that's gone into this from Kate is so impressive that we need to get that trademarked immediately. As Kate mentioned earlier, this episode is coming out the week of Eurovision. The semi-finals will have been going on, so we don't know who the finalists are yet. And so because of that, we thought we'd do something a bit different this week. And instead of doing a Vicar of Dibley episode, we are expanding our world and knowledge to a different TV vicar, clergy person, priest. And we're going to have a little look at Father Ted and the episode that's called Song for Europe. And we're going to talk about Father Ted and the Catholic Church and all that kind of thing, as well as having a healthy dose of Eurovision.
Before we get into talking about Father Ted, we do want to name that the creator of Father Ted, Graham Linehan, is well known for his anti-trans activism. This is something which we disagree with wholeheartedly. We have many much-loved trans friends. We're not going to particularly delve into the theology of this at the moment, or the wider issue of separating work from creator, but we wanted to make it very clear that we do not support his views.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we thought was really important to say.
Definitely.
So having said that, have we watched much Father Ted? And I'm going to ask this to Jenny, first of all. What's your experience of Father Ted?
Well, my experience of Father Ted, I'm afraid to say, and I am afraid to say because I've enjoyed watching this episode and thinking about it and note-taking, but I've watched hardly any. So if you, dear listener, are like me and you're a bit of a Father Ted newbie, then we can ask all the silly questions to you guys, because I think, I could be wrong, but I think you've watched a lot more than I have.
I think Kate's watched a lot more than me. I've only seen a few episodes of Father Ted. I'm aware of the concept and know some quotes of it. But for those who haven't ever watched Father Ted, here's a little bit of background on it. So it's based in a really rural part of Ireland called Craggy Island, and it's about 3 Catholic priests. The whole story is centred around mainly 3 Catholic priests: Father Ted, Father Dougal, Father Jack, and then there's their housekeeper, Mrs. Doyle, as well. And it's the adventures that these characters get up to as part of it. Whereas, Kate, I think you're quite a big fan of the old Father Ted.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. I've definitely watched it, and I think I said in a previous episode I perhaps have more laugh out loud moments at Father Ted.
Yes.
But I don't know how much of that is nostalgia, having watched it in the past, versus now. I mean, I will admit, rewatching this episode, I didn't find it as funny as I think I did in the past. And maybe that's something we'll talk about, the difference of how comedy ages and why Vicar of Dibley, at least for me, has stood for test of time, whereas perhaps Father Ted hasn't as much. Or it could just be this episode doesn't have the moments that I particularly associate with Father Ted, which has given us some wonderful quotable moments, such as "that would be an ecumenical matter."
Yes,
a
that's
fantastic,
true.
usable quote to use when a bishop comes and asks you a theological question you don't know the answer to. You answer with, "That would be an ecumenical matter, Father."
Yeah, I actually think as an introduction to Father Ted, this isn't the best episode to go for. I think if you've never watched it before, go for, there's a brilliant one which is based on Speed, which involves a milk float.
That was the one in my mind.
Yeah.
That is absolutely hilarious and wonderful. And then there's the one as well where a group of Catholic priests get trapped in a lingerie section of a department store, and that is full of like eye-wateringly funny moments. So maybe don't start with this episode if you've never seen Father Ted before, but it fitted in with Eurovision, so we wanted to do this episode, so get off our back, all right?
I have to say, I was quite pleasantly surprised, because although I've only seen probably literally 1 or 2 or 3 maybe episodes, there was a couple of laugh out moments for me in this Father Ted episode, which I did enjoy. And I think the way we're going to talk about it today, especially as we're linking in with Eurovision, is a bit different to Vicar of Dibley. I think we're not going to take it scene by scene, are we? But I think there are certain things or threads throughout the episode or moments that we're like, ooh, that would be really good to sort of dive a bit deeper into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the big thing to talk about at the beginning is just the way that the whole setup is that here are three priests who live together in a big old house with a housekeeper who comes and sees to their every needs and insists that everyone has plenty of cups of tea, which is quite different to how we live.
Very different.
So, yeah, this setup in Father Ted, I associate really more with the Catholic Church than the Church of England. I think particularly the clergy living together as generations, which of course comes from, in the Catholic Church, priests aren't allowed to get married. And in the Anglican Church, we are allowed to get married.
I am married to a priest.
I intend to be married, but not to a priest.
And I don't know, maybe that will happen, maybe it won't.
It's nice.
What a spectrum we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice for us to have the freedom to decide. And I know that there are theological reasons for abstaining from marriage or relationships. But yeah, no doubt we all have our, opinions and theories on that. But you're right, it is an interesting relationship, especially because Father Ted and Dougal share a bedroom as well. Not only do they share a house, they actually share a room. Yeah,
so
I had forgotten
weird.
that about their relationship.
The only reason I can think for that is it's to save on heating.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. But it's for a comedy thing and to reduce the number of sets and so that they can have an alternate room. Because really, I think you only ever see the two rooms in their parsonage, which is the living room / study and the bedroom. And I actually often used, when I was training, when I was a curate, which is like the NQT, newly qualified teacher equivalent of clergy, I used to explain what I was as like being Dougal from Father Ted, but I didn't live with my vicar, and I most definitely did not share a room with my vicar.
No. Yeah, so all of us have gone through curacy, which is kind of like an internship, isn't it, in lots of ways, that you're qualified to do the job, but you're learning on the job in lots of different ways. And so we had, the way that Father Ted works is Father Ted is kind of the mentor to Father Dougal, who is learning how to be a priest in lots of ways, and is fairly early on in his journey of priesthood. And then Father Jack is older than Father Ted and has been a priest a long time, and well, he's an interesting character, isn't he?
Yes.
And he mainly just sits in the corner, looks gross, and drinks and smokes and talks about girls. Those are the three main words. We're trying really hard to not do terrible Irish accents.
Trying so hard, it's so tempting.
But you just
almost
want to.
did it.
Yeah, we'll probably fail at some point, but so they've got this dynamic going on of these three different priests who are at very different stages of life. And yeah, as curates, we went through that and had a kind of Father Ted figure, but none of us lived and shared a bedroom.
No, indeed.
With what's it called, training incumbent.
Yes, and then also in the Church of England, you do have then retired clergy sometimes in your parish as well. So you do tend to have sometimes those three generations of clergy, just not in one house, which is the setup we have here.
That would be a lot, wouldn't it?
That would be a lot. I think one of the main differences I see in comparing Father Ted and a Vicar of Dibley is not just which faith it is, the Anglican Church versus the Catholic Church, but actually what their focus is. So the Vicar of Dibley focuses more on the relationships of Geraldine the Vicar with the other people in the village. And it's this idea of exploring village life and these personalities where you annoy each other but you ultimately rub along, and it's fairly optimistic. Whereas Father Ted focuses more on the corrupt characters and personality flaws of its core characters. So Father Ted, it's revealed in one of the episodes why they have all been essentially exiled to this remote island.
I've not seen that one.
Yeah, so it's revealed that Father Ted fudged the numbers on some accounts to receive funds. This may end up in the confessional, but I'm getting this slightly wrong. I believe for Dougal there was an incident at a nunnery. And for Father Jack, it's revealed in a number of episodes that his conduct...
You don't need to explain why Father Jack is put on that island.
Father Jack,
keep him far away.
Yes.
He's naked in this episode, isn't he?
Is he? I don't think so.
Oh no, I watched a different episode as well.
But anyway, they've all been put on this island Ireland for a reason, almost an exile, and most of the episodes revolve around one of these personality flaws. So Father Ted's big personality flaw is about personal gain. He is fame hungry, he is power hungry, and he is hungry for money as well. And often, no matter how well-meaning he is, this crops up in each of the scenarios.
Which we see in this episode, isn't it? That he wants to do Eurovision because, well, it starts out with Mrs. Doyle saying he has a lovely voice.
She takes it back.
And then she changes her mind. And then there's a rivalry, which we'll get onto soon. And he decides that he's going to write a song for Europe, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be better than this other priest, and all this kind of thing. And he wants that fame and the kind of stardom that comes with it, and hoping for financial gain as part of it as well. So Father Ted is a very flawed character, but you also feel for him. These aren't three characters that you look at and just go, these are all terrible people, except maybe Father Jack. I'm struggling to find many redeeming features of him.
I have affection for Father Jack. There's definitely moments where he grows on you, and you can sort of see why he's lost so much interest.
Yeah.
And like I said, he grows on you. I wouldn't say he's the most moral character, but he has his moments where you think, oh, Father Jack, bless you, Father. Yeah. And then Dougal. I mean, I don't know about you two, but when I was watching that opening scene, it could almost have been a Vicar of Dibley scene.
Yeah.
Like that opening gambit, which we see in so many Vicar of Dibley episodes, where you have Geraldine, the senior person, is working on something or doing something to do with their own interests. And then they are interrupted by the naive, bumbling character. In Vicar of Dibley, it would be Alice coming in, and she would be wittering on about Eurovision or something. And here it's Dougal looking for his record collection, which is one record.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. There's a very kind of Alice-Geraldine relationship between the two of them, between Ted and Dougal. But yeah, that's really interesting. And we were saying, as we were planning and talking about this, I think one of the main differences as well with Vicar of Dibley is that this series, as we've already talked about, is a lot more focused on the priests and the relationship between priests, which in Vicar of Dibley, it's much more about the parish and the people in it. And so we find out about this great parish rivalry, or parish rivalry, priest rivalry. It's like island rivalry. Yeah. Between Father Ted and Father Dick Byrne.
I'm sorry, what was that name?
Be funny.
I was going to say, could you just repeat that name for us, just to be absolutely clear?
That would be Father Dick Byrne.
Okay, yeah.
Father Richard Byrne, I suppose, if we're calling him by his Sunday name.
His Sunday name.
It's so good.
Father Dick. And they've got this fierce rivalry going on.
Sorry to interrupt you. Fierce, but also ridiculously childish as well.
It's
like
so
overwhelmingly
childish.
frustrating to watch, like almost painful to watch. I felt.
Yeah,
I'm very oversensitive.
It's something which just isn't touched on in a Vicar of Dibley. I think Geraldine exists very much in a little vacuum in Dibley, and we very rarely see other clergy. We do see her friends sometimes will come and pop in, or people from her past.
Yeah.
But we don't see the vicar of the neighbouring village. Whereas actually that's a really core part of parish ministry, is your neighbours, the people from your neighbouring parishes, and occasionally your rival parishes. You know, there can be disputes about, you baptised someone in your church who actually lives in my parish, or you did a wedding for a couple who they should have come to my church and we should have gotten the money, but actually your church was prettier, so they chose your church. Or you can have these really edifying relationships where in my deanery, which is, I guess, like your ward district, council district, is, you know, we work as a team. There's 4 paid clergy plus a curate and then some self-supporting clergy as well, and we all work as a team, and it's really lovely. And I wouldn't be able to do my job without that mutual support. So it's really interesting that we never see that with Geraldine, but we do see it here with Ted, and it is very much childish rivalry.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And that's shown later on in the episode where they make a bet about who's going to win. And then they're like, and I'll bet against you. Yeah, how much? £4.
Yes.
Right, okay. We'll put a bet on it for £4.
And I think also in the fact that they are very much parallels of each other. And we see this a lot in Father Ted, where actually for every priest they encounter, there seems to be a Dougal equivalent and a Father Jack equivalent. And there's one episode where there's one priest who has a really cool curate or equivalent of Dougal, and Dougal gets influenced by him and starts acting out like a teenager.
I was just going to say, even Father Dick Byrne has his own curate, doesn't he? So it's like, it almost like mirror reflections of each other.
Yeah. And I do think it's worth saying that as priests, we are not perfect people at all in any stretch of the imagination. I could give you a long list of my flaws, but it's probably not best to put that out there on the internet. And this rivalry between priests, you might think that's completely ridiculous, but I think it is the case in some places that, you know, there can be a bit of one-upmanship of, you know, we're doing this for Christmas, so, that parish over there is doing something better. And it shouldn't be like that at all, and that is completely flawed and not how God intended us to work together at all, I think. And unlike Kate, who's her deanery, her kind of group of churches together and group of clergy together work well, I've worked in other places where it has been that rivalry, and it's been like, it's that, you know, church over there, blah, 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 they do this and we're just going to ignore them, and da, da, da. Or people who just go, I'm going out on my own, I'm not engaging with other people at all. And that's really sad, and we shouldn't be like that, but we're human and we compare ourselves to each other, don't we?
Big time. But it's such a shame, like you say, because really what I've found in my deanery, like where I am at the moment, I'm sure there is that bubbling up under the surface and things, but actually, especially during the pandemic, but even now, sharing resources and getting together and being honest about things with other people that get it is wonderful, because although we don't see in the Vicar of Dibley Geraldine with her colleagues, and I wish we did, because that is and should be an important part of ministry, also the reality is that you are working on your own a lot of the time. If you're a solo incumbent, you're not part of a team, actually you are a lone ranger in your parish. Do you know what I mean? And actually, so I think it's good to have a mixture, because although, working with colleagues and having that side of things displayed and unpacked and almost made fun of is really good and important. But actually, I feel like a lot of the time I'm doing this on my darker days, I feel like I'm doing this on my own. But when you get together with your deanery or with a neighbouring colleague, or, you know, your area dean or archdeacon visit, and these are all the kind of the one-up or senior levels of the church, then you're like, oh my goodness, it's not just me. It's like when all the clergy come together, oh my goodness, for me that feels like, feels like family coming together. Maybe I'm a weirdo. That is sad, isn't it?
No, that's so beautiful.
it's what gets you through ministry, I think, is having people in a similar situation to you who you can talk about stuff with. So, for example, having a small group of peers who you meet up to pray with and talk through what's going on and bounce ideas off, or you say, look, this situation's happening in my parish, can you just pray for me? Is so important. But also to share resources. So does anyone have any resources for Good Friday? Because I'm running on empty here and I have no idea where to start.
Yeah.
But sadly, we are all human and we have that fallibility, and you don't need to look any further than Church of England Twitter to see how competitive and how petty clergy can be, and Church of England clergy. Yeah. And I don't think it's out of meanness. I think it's defensiveness, it's anxiety, and it's possessiveness, but also feeling that what we do is so precious. Yeah. And so when you see someone doing something differently, I think that's when people can react. And unfortunately, Twitter just enables the worst of reacting.
Yeah.
Much more than it enables good reacting.
When you can be anonymous or feel anonymous and just shout things out into the void, and actually, you know, people can see what you're putting. It's really interesting you say all that, because this session that I said I was doing earlier with these primary school kids, we asked the question about why do people not like change, and they all submit their answers, and it's lots of the things that we're talking about we're very set in our ways a lot of the time, and change is scary and we're afraid, and that's why we lash out, and it's got to be worth it to do the change because it's hard work, and I think someone had just put like, people are rubbish. It's one of their answers. Which is like, yeah, maybe we could word it a bit nicer, but yeah, we can just be really flawed as people, and
it's true, and it's just a shame, isn't it? And it's difficult when that comes to the surface and is so obvious. I'm not sure about you guys, but every Easter Sunday I am on top of the world with love for humanity, and I'm like, Lord, you are amazing. Do you know what, for the last couple of years I've woken up on Easter Monday and I've just, I don't know, popped on Facebook, or something's happened, maybe sometimes like the Tuesday after Easter, and I've just had an overwhelming come down and been like, do you know what, Lord, it wasn't worth it. People are so rubbish. It wasn't worth it. What you did for us. Do you know what I wish you hadn't done for us, because all of us are so rubbish. I don't know why. I seem to have like a massive come down from the heights of thinking humans are amazing and that God loves us all so much, to being like, actually, it wasn't worth it. We're all so rubbish, Lord. Can I just say, I think I've massively sidetracked, and I do apologise for that.
But I think this kind of brings us back to morality and character, and how Father Ted actually really focuses on this, and as a conversation starter, in a way, that's its strength, is you do delve more into the flawed nature of humanity, and Ted just doesn't do good, doesn't do well in this episode. I mean, My Lovely Horse is an absolute banger, but it is super plagiarized, and Ted has no interest in seeing that any proceeds which come from this record actually go to the surviving family members of the people who produced it. He's like, tragic circumstances, if you haven't seen the episode. Ted and Dougal can't write a song. Dougal picks up his favourite Euro song, puts it to the B-side by accident, and plays a very unknown Norwegian song which has a very catchy tune, reveals a tragic backstory where everyone involved with making the record is dead. Everyone who produced it, everyone who wrote it, etc. There was an accident, and Ted says, so no one would know if we took it, and he spins it as they're honouring the memory, but actually
But we don't tell anyone about it.
Yeah. So they create My Lovely Horse, which is fantastic. It is a parody, apparently, I took some notes. So I did some research.
Oh wow!
Obviously, for research queen when it comes to research.
You are.
So it was.
Me and Jenny just bumble along.
You do.
It was written by the Divine Comedy's Neil Hannon. The Divine Comedy performed the intro song to Father Ted.
Oh.
And it was released as a B-side, and this is important. The Divine Comedy released this later. So the video is a parody of an Ireland entry from 1975, which was seen as being one of the funniest videos for a Eurovision entry ever. Ireland has performed exceptionally well in Eurovision historically, and I'll give you loads of Eurovision facts later. But anyway, at 1994, this episode was released in 1996, but in 1994, Ireland had won 2 years in a row, and they didn't want to win another year, so they deliberately picked someone who they thought was going to lose. Unfortunately, this person became the highest scoring entry in the contest history, so they won for a third year consecutively, setting a Eurovision record. This whole episode is a parody of that circumstance, which is why later on they get selected to be the Eurovision entry, even though they're so bad. It's because Ireland doesn't want to win at that point. So, but anyway, every year this song is so loved. My Lovely Horse is so loved that every year it's suggested as the real Ireland entry.
Oh, really?
However, because it was released by the Divine Comedy as a B-side, they're not allowed to, because Eurovision songs have to be original. They cannot be previously released songs.
Yeah.
I
knew that
knowledge.
fun fact.
That is a knowledge bomb, mic drop.
Yeah.
Which was a massive diversion from talking about Ted's character, but I just wanted to share my knowledge.
I loved it.
And that was brilliant. And again, I think Ted using that because Dougal says it's not well known, again highlights something that I think is a bit of a cliche about clergy, is that we're not in touch with culture at all. Because it turns out this song is very well known because people are humming it and you hear it in the lift and all this kind of thing.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that, yeah.
I think we're seen as people who, we just sit at home and watch Countdown and don't engage with culture at all. Not slagging off Countdown because that is a cracking show, especially when it's combined with 8 out of 10 cats. But we seem to be people who don't know culture and don't engage with it. And I think this is another example of showing it.
Yeah.
Which leads to Dougal's big question that they have when they're sat in bed together with Dougal with his Masters of the Universe duvet set of asking the question, can priests be cool or can priests be rock stars?
Classic question.
A great question. What's the answer?
Well, Father Ted says, I suppose if people know that you're a priest, they think that you're uncool, that you're a bit of a square. And then Dougal says, and then we came along. I'm afraid so. I've got a bit of a shadow to this question. Not just can priests be cool / rock stars, but do all priests think we're cool and secretly we're not?
It's really uncool to say that you think you're cool.
Yeah.
To be fair, I guess it is, well, what is the definition of cool? For us, being sold out for Jesus is the ultimate cool. So I reckon, actually, yeah. And I'm like, but then if you think of what's cool, if someone said to me, what's cool, I'd be like, being a surfer dude with your, or a surfer babe with your little, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like with your thing half rolled down.
A picture of cool.
That's what you go to. Surfers are cool.
But if someone goes like, describe a cool
Cowabunga
person.
dudes.
I am Cowabunga dude and Cowabunga babe having a drink on the beach with their like, what's that swimsuit? Massive warm swimsuit thing that you wear in the sea to keep you from freezing.
Your
A wetsuit.
Yeah, wetsuit, yeah. With that half rolled down and knowing that you're going to like a cool party later that night. If someone says what is cool, that is what cool is.
That's your picture of
Such
cool.
an insight into you.
That That is so great.
If I
I'm so
measure up-
happy I know that about you now.
Yeah,
But the scary thing
that's
is that if I
amazing.
measure up my life to that image of what is cool, I fall very, 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 very short.
Oh, okay then, Kate. What do you picture when you think of someone who's cool?
Yes.
So I think someone who's cool is someone who is unashamed about loving the things they love and really, has passions that you can see and is confident about their interests. So whether that's, I guess for me, it's like I'm really into sci-fi and fantasy, so I think sci-fi and fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons are really cool.
Oh,
Yes.
And therefore anyone who likes that is cool. And because
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm cool. But I don't know. I suppose there's the stereotype of musicians are cool. And I guess as a teenager, I thought musicians were really cool. But I think now in my 30s, it's more someone who owns their interests and just has that confidence about what they like. It doesn't really matter what you like as long as you're confident and unashamed about liking it. I've got a favourite quote from a TV show, Community.
Great
which
show.
The character Albert is, he just loves so many things. He's a fantastic geek, and he just says, "I guess I just like liking things." And I really like that as a summary of what I think is called liking things.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Was it you who got me onto watching Community?
Probably.
Yeah.
And if for anyone on the internet, I suppose, who's lived on the internet in the 2000s, the Vlog Brothers and Don't Forget to Be Awesome is another way of explaining cool.
I've got a lot of things to Google after today, I think. So we've heard mine and Kate's view of cool, Ruthie. What is it for you that makes a person cool? Or what does a picture of cool look like for you?
It's really interesting and thinking about how you reflect on what's cool and how how that changes over time. So Kate's becoming, liking things and that sort of stuff. But I still think a little bit of the heart of me still sees the cool person as the guitarist or the bass player or the lead singer or the drummer of a band who's up there wearing denim and leather and studs and he or she actually either can be cool. Tattoos, just rocking out. That made me sound really lame, and being awesome and having big kind of stage presence and being. I would have looked up at a person like that and gone, "Oh wow, they're so cool. I wish I was like them." So
Ruthie, I honestly think of you as one of the coolest people I know.
You are super cool. You are super
that's
cool.
kind. I feel like. Do you remember seeing School of Rock?
Yes, love that film.
And the guy who plays the keyboards, he's like, "I can't be in a band. I'm not cool enough."
He's like, "No, you're
I
way
feel
cool."
like that a lot of the time. So I have my tattoos and my almost mullet hair and try my best to be cool. But I think it's the case with lots of cool people that they feel like behind the scenes they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to be cool. I've got to do all this kind of thing." But the confidence is cool. I think when people know who they are and they own their skin and just be the person that they know they want to be. I think that's really cool. And I'm trying my best to be more like that now, I think.
Love
just
that.
going, this is who I am and I want to be like this. And do you know what? If that means I'm wearing leopard print dungarees all the time, means I'm wearing leopard print dungarees all the time. And trying to be confident in that. And we've talked about him previously, but the Reverend Richard Coles is a good example of someone who is a priest and rock star.
Yeah, definitely. So Reverend Richard Coles is actually in my diocese, which is cool. He's only in a couple of parishes away from me, and I believe he is due to retire before long. In fact, there was a piece recently in the Times, I think, about what he thinks about retirement and things. So he was famous because he was in a band called the Communards for a while, and then came into ministry. And I mean, in our diocese especially, I think is really valued. I remember I mean, for example, he did before my time in Els Barton, which is where I'm the vicar of, he did a talk one night and people were literally queuing outside desperate to get in and see him. Like, he's got a really, he's very well liked, very well loved. I think the clergy in our diocese, like, so on our Maundy Thursday service, he was there, and it was everyone was like, "Oh, look, that's," and you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to sort of make a thing, you don't embarrass him exactly or overwhelm him. But it was really lovely, actually, and I think so. I'm going to go out there and say I think you can be cool and a priest if the two aren't a natural bond. I think you can. I think it would be hard though to be a rock star and a priest. But to be honest, if someone, I remember my mum asking me what would my dream job be, and actually before I wholeheartedly committed to pursuing ordination, being in a Christian band would be like really high up there on the jobs I would love to do. If I had a gift at being able to do that, that would be, I would love that so much. So maybe you can be,
Jenny, you have the most beautiful singing voice, so much so you sang at my wedding.
Well, that is true.
So you're already there, and you're on the minor Christian celebrity scale, it would seem, as well. So,
no, only if it's Comedy Fools, lol.
And I think
saying lol is uncool.
Do you know what I've got? Can I just? Sorry to be a poo. It's a horrible habit of mine. I cannot stop saying lol. It's been a problem since being about 17. I don't know what to do about it.
Pray for Jenny.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
Millennial problems. But I mean, we have friends from college. I've got a particular friend in my mind who is an exceptional musician and has been in loads of rock bands. In fact, there's
also played at my wedding.
Yeah, and he'd probably think of himself as not like a big rock star, but and then there was someone else. Who
he is a cool priest.
There was someone who went on tour, like did a festival, played a festival. We're being very oblique here. We probably shouldn't. Anyway, I think we know people who are priests and are also in bands. Obviously, there's the Christian celebrities in Christian circles, but also kind of mainstream. So Kate Botley,
Justin Bieber.
Just
Christian.
He's not a priest.
No, that's true.
As far as I know,
right, yeah.
I think, but then on a more kind of down to earth scale, what I've found in parish is just being myself and not hiding my interests. So things like, Ruthie, you visited my house. Jenny, you will visit my house. You'll see my interests are out there on my shelves, like on my walls, and in the way I dress. And I think people have said to me, it's really cool that you're yourself. I've never met a priest who likes sci-fi or, and there's something about, it's not that I am defying priesthood by liking the things I like or dressing the way I dress, but I am showing that priesthood includes lots of different people and includes people like me, just as it includes. I'm
feeling, Caitlin, incredible incarnation vibes right now. As in, you have resumed within you what it is to be a human with natural, normal, funky interests and the priesthood.
Funky fresh.
Funky fresh. I love that.
But, I think we even see this struggle in the way that the Craggy Island parsonage is decorated.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Like, this push and pull between personal interests and what I just associate as a really stereotypical Catholic parsonage decor, which could admittedly come from watching Father Ted. I do need to name that. Yeah.
It's just seeing their bedroom and the difference between Dougal's side and Father Ted's side, Father Dougal and Father Ted, is really interesting because Dougal's a newer priest. He seems to have incorporated a bit more of his passions and love, whereas Father Ted seems a bit more of a traditional priest in lots of ways, and that's kind of hidden away a bit. So you look at Dougal's side and he's got posters up at the things he likes and that kind of thing. And Father Ted has got, traditional kind of Catholic art on the walls, and
Abide with me.
abide with me. I think he said abide in me.
Abide in me. Ooh.
Abide in me. Because I was looking at that and goes, oh, abide with me, and then went, no, it says in me.
And then there's a Pope clock.
Oh yeah,
that Pope clock I would like very much.
It'll go very well with my sparkly Jesus, my sparkly Mary. What we are revealing is, this is classic vicarage, I think, is you have your personal interests, but then there's a certain passion for really kitschy Christian tags.
Yes. My sparkly Mary statue is Our Lady of the Lavatory, and she's in the loo, so she looks down upon you as you pee.
Goodness. I think that's the thing though, isn't it? Like, having your interests is one thing, but I think when you're in like the limelight, or when push comes to shove, are you able to stand firm in your faith as well? So it's one thing to say, yes, I'm a priest, and this is how my house is decorated, see the things I like and love, or this is where I am, this is what I'm doing. Yes, and I happen to be a priest. But I thought this episode had a really interesting take on what it is to be a Christian leader when you're confronted with someone who is completely the opposite, or lives a very different lifestyle, or has a very different set of beliefs. And Father Ted completely folds. He backtracks on a huge, interesting and also very potentially very sensitive, very painful topic around LGBT plus community. And he denies time and time again that the Catholic Church seemed to have a problem with it, or the Pope, maybe the Pope got it wrong, or and he backtracks, and it's so interesting. It seems to me very much a people pleaser, and to not stand firm at all in the heritage of what he believes or is told to believe. And again, that's a whole thing we could unpack. But it's like, how able are you to stand firm in your faith when you're with people that perhaps aren't of faith or Christian? And again, this issue feels too big to talk about in too much detail, but I know it's something we will come on to explore, which I think is really important. But it's like, when you're surrounded with your Dungeons and Dragons people, like, does faith come up? Or for me, I mean, I don't actually have any hobbies, which is really quite sad. What? But if I was like... But if so women's rugby was something I did before COVID, and like, it's like, well, how often would I be able to talk about faith there? And if everyone was like saying, oh yeah, you Christians, you believe this, blah, like, how do we respond? And I think that's a good question, not just for Christian leaders, but for all Christians, and all people of faith. But I think this is a particularly painful part of the episode for me, to just watch Father Ted fold and fold and fold. We're getting some Peter denial vibes, well, I was anyway, but I like to overthink things. But yeah, I think that's the thing, being both rock star and priest. I
think it's one of those contrasts then that we see between Ted and Geraldine again. It reminds me very much of, in the episodes we've most recently reviewed, of Geraldine, of elections, where Geraldine is really standing firm about challenging David, about Jesus's more left-wing message, or even the conversation we have between Geraldine and David. And it always does seem to be between Geraldine and David in the Easter episode, where David is panicking about Hugo's sexual orientation. And Geraldine just very, very calmly is firm about what she believes and what she sees as right, and she steers it very well. Whereas Ted does what I call priest panic. He has that desire to please and that desire to be nice and to give the God loves all message. But when faced with valid criticism, because Charles, for those who don't know the episode, Ted is talking to a producer of a song for Ireland who's called Charles, who reveals that he is in a relationship with the host, that they are gay, and Ted goes into priest panic and stumbles over his words, and he says, there's nothing wrong with it. Charles says, well, I thought actually the Catholic Church was fairly explicit about this being wrong. And then Ted says, maybe the Pope was wrong. And Charles says, well, what about papal infallibility? Which means that the Pope can't be wrong. I
have a fun fact about that. papal infallibility, it's one of those things that I think is talked about quite a lot, that everything the Pope says is right, but that's not 100% correct, and I'm preparing to get into the confessional when I get this wrong inevitably. But apparently the Pope is only infallible when there has to be specific circumstances where the Pope, he declares something. I think he has to be sat on a special chair or something like that, on his Pope chair, and it's only when he speaks then that he is infallible.
That's fascinating.
That must be quite a relief for the Pope,
right.
I'd have thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be right all the time, surely.
No one does. But yeah, anyway, Ted does priest panic, and he just hasn't really done the thinking through, I feel. You can tell the difference when someone has really thought through the issues, and if they're going to make a claim, knows how to back it up. In theology, this is called apologetics, which is sort of explaining what we believe and why we believe it. Whereas for me, Ted, it's not that he hasn't done that, but definitely in this situation, he's panicking, and so things aren't connecting in his mind.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting situation once where I experienced priest panic from the opposite side, where I'd been in a service where the priest there had preached that they didn't agree with women's ordination and that women shouldn't be ordained, and not realising that I was an ordained woman in the congregation. And I later on met this chap whilst I was wearing my dog collar, and so I was quite clearly an ordained person, and he'd clocked me in the service earlier on, and he went into priest panic of, if you were, he said something along the lines of, if I know you were in the service, I wouldn't have said what I said. And I thought, where is your integrity? And then kind of bumbled and panicked and said, actually, I think we can agree that there are bigger issues, that we should be involved in the church. And I was very nice to this person.
Well done.
I could have said other things and said, yes, that's very interesting. And I just thought, if you're going to have an opinion on something,
boldly.
think it through. My opinions on various different subjects have definitely changed over the years as I've researched into things more. And therefore I can now state where I am much more boldly, as opposed to doing priest panic about stuff. And that is hard when you disagree with someone about something. But it's about standing your... Not standing your ground necessarily, because that sounds really confrontational, but actually going, this is my opinion and yours might be different, but hopefully we can both honour and respect.
And I think a
other's.
great tool for life, whenever you're sharing an opinion, whether it's from the front of church or just with a friend or, on a massive platform, is that you speak about the person, not naming them, but like that group. So say if that the man that had been sharing his opinion about women priests, you have to imagine that there are women priests in front of you. And I know he'd clocked you, but it's like if we're talking about someone or a group or someone who identifies a particular way and we're sharing an opinion that affects them, I think always having, speaking as if they were there is so important. That's just a great tool, I think, for how we treat other human beings.
If you can't say something to someone's face, don't say it behind their back. I think is actually a really good rule. Because ultimately everything gets back to people. And if you can't justify what you've said, if you can't either own your apology and say, that wasn't on, or own your experience and say, from my experience, but I respect your experience and I'd be happy to enter into a dialogue and conversation. There's something about respecting that we are all on different journeys, and the opinion I have could be wrong, and I'm willing to, if my opinion wouldn't be worth anything if I wasn't willing to have it tested.
I want to test one of your opinions, Kate.
Okay.
Is Eurovision that good anyway?
Yes. Eurovision is amazing, and I will die on this hill. So moving on from Father Ted, maybe. So we picked this episode of Father Ted because it's Eurovision themed, and I was fairly adamant when we were scheduling our recording and release that if we did an episode that came out in tandem with Eurovision, we were going to do a Eurovision themed episode. Part of this is because I really strongly associate Eurovision with my church friendship groups growing up from my teenage years. This was something I did with my church friends.
Weirdly.
We had Eurovision parties where we would all watch Eurovision together. We'd stay up. We would pick a team to support. You might dress up. Not a team, but we could pick a country to support.
Pick a team.
And, and there's so many different ways to celebrate it, and those have changed as we've gotten older. But for me, it's such a joyful part of a year. It always comes after Easter, and in this period where we've got now like quite a long stretch of there are festivals but nothing as big as the crush that you get from the run of Harvest, Remembrance, Kingdom, Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, and Eurovision's just one of those great. Yeah,
Pentecost.
We have Pentecost as well, but, and Ascension and then Pentecost. But Eurovision usually comes when the church calendar is just opening up a little bit, and it's fun. For me, it's just unashamedly fun, and I am a fan of Europe. I even did a placement in the church in Europe while I was training to learn about mission and ministry in the diocese in Europe, which is the Church of England's as it functions on the continent. Yes, and it was lovely. And I would, to be honest, I'd really love to work out there at some point.
Well, I did. I worked in the Diocese of Europe for just under 2 years. So I'm going to sound really pretentious now, but I used to live in Paris, darling. And used to work for a church there. So I worked for the diocese in Europe. It was really interesting because I think we've explained previously, so dioceses are kind of like counties or states. They're a small part of the country, and then they're split further into deaneries and archdeaconries and all this kind of thing. But the way that it works in Europe, it's all the European countries. So when you meet for Deanery Synod, which is when all the vicars meet together, people have flown in from different countries to all meet together. So I went to one of them when it was at our church in Paris, and you just meeting vicars from all these different countries, which was just amazing. And yeah, it was a really wonderful place to be, but you had to think really differently because you haven't got the kind of physical closeness as you do in other parts. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Europe and Eurovision as well. And it's weird that you associate it with church friends because I do too. And whereas Jenny, I don't think you're not as big into it.
I remember there's a couple of friends I had in school who were super into Eurovision, and I just remember thinking like, oh, that's nice for them. But I never thought to myself, oh, I should watch it and also have a party. I mean, the only year, if I'm totally honest, the only year that I ever watched it was the year that we had Daz Sampson doing Teenage Life. I was 15 and I absolutely had to rewatch before we came on to do some recording, I rewatched the video and listened to the song because I just remember loving the song. I thought it was so catchy. I loved it.
Oh my gosh.
You can imagine I was horrified when I watched it again because it's really like, oh, screw our teachers, we don't care what they say. And, living a rebel life, which I don't necessarily agree to. So when I was 15, I remember I had my pen and paper. It was me on my own in front of the TV going, yeah. And I think we came 19th out of 25. And I think that was the year that I loved Eurovision. And then the love for Eurovision in my heart died. However, I am looking forward to this year because I think I'm going to be partying with you guys online. I think we're going to do something, aren't we? So I am actually looking forward to Eurovision this year. And I'm hoping that the love I once had for, back in when my 15-year-old self will be relit again. That's the hope.
Yes. Yes.
We should probably explain what Eurovision is because completely surprisingly, and we love it, we have international listeners, which we never expected to have. So we shall explain what the Eurovision Song Contest is. To summarise, it's a song contest that takes place in Europe. So each country offers an act and a song, which, as we've said, has to be completely unique to that. It can't be a previously released song. And the previous country that won hosts Eurovision for that year. And it's a big song contest. They sing the song, we vote, we give points. The interesting thing for Eurovision is some would say it's corrupt, and certain countries always vote for the other. Whether we would agree with that or not is a different thing. And we are really bad at it as Great Britain. We used to be good at it.
I have
people
some
don't like
Eurovision
us.
facts.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm excited.
You give us the proper facts as opposed to my opinion.
The Eurovision Song Contest has been held annually since 1956, except for 2020 when it was cancelled due to the pandemic. All members of the European Broadcasting Union and invited associate members are eligible to compete. So the European Broadcasting Union was formed after World War II to promote the collaboration between European countries. So this is something that came in post-war Europe, thinking about how can we become closer as a European community to counteract the tensions and to ease the tensions following the war.
The weird thing is, we have extra countries that are added in. So, Israel and Australia.
I'm freaking out.
Yes, so it's not the European Union. The European Broadcasting Union is separate, so it's a TV thing. And this is why there are also these invited associate members, because it's about money. So that's why you have Australia, you have Israel, you have Russia, but you have all these countries that are not actually part of the European Union, but they are a part of, or they pay a lot of money to receive programming from, the European Broadcasting Union.
I love this.
Yes. Each participating broadcaster sends one original song of 3 minutes or less to be performed live by a singer or group of singers, a maximum of 6 performers on stage over 16. So one of my really geeky facts about this episode, we didn't do it by scene, is that actually Father Burns' entry breaks the rules because he has more than 6 people on stage.
It does, yeah.
Ireland holds the record for the most number of wins, 7 in total.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The winner hosts next year. So this is also one of my theories, is actually there's a sense of you don't want to win too much because it's costly to host. So there is a balancing in picking your acts. The UK has a reputation, I think, to be honest, fairly quite rightly so. UK tends to score low. Our acts aren't always great. Now, there's a balance here between, there's a particular tone to Eurovision that's expected. There's a certain kind of production and campness and fun or weirdness, which I think because the UK music industry is actually quite international, and people, we have a very specific, very commercial music industry now, and there's always a tension between you hear it kind of a lot where people say, well, why didn't the UK send some of their bigger acts? They don't take Eurovision seriously. But the bigger acts don't really want to risk their reputations by getting no points.
Our attitude towards Eurovision, I think, is quite different to the rest of the countries. So for other countries, it is a massive deal and like very serious, whereas I think we think it's very silly. And yes, it is very silly sometimes. So we engage with it in a different way to other people, where other countries seem to vote for actually the best song, and whereas I've already noted down some of the acts that I'm looking forward to.
Oh my gosh, you didn't research.
Because I knew we were doing this, and I'm looking forward to. There are 2 song titles that I'd just like to read to you. Latvia's offering this year is called "Eat Your Salad," and Norway's offering is called "Give That Wolf a Banana."
Yes.
And I am looking forward to both those songs, and therefore I hope they make it to the final.
Performers
Wow.
are like they're wearing masks which are a weird combination of banana and wolf. And what's really interesting is often for some of these countries there are bands formed specifically for Eurovision. So Iceland's entry last year, which is one of my favourite entries of all time, and to be honest has become one of my favourite artists of all time, Davíð Þór, formed a band called Gagna Magnet.
Wow, well done.
Which was actually Davíð Þór, and because he didn't want to be alone on stage, he firstly tried to convince someone else to perform his song, and they said no. So he got together his friends and family to put together a fake band, deliberately fake playing instruments. And I really like it.
Dances.
Yeah, really silly dances, really fun, but created specifically for Eurovision. And I get the impression that the Give the Wolf a Banana Latvia entry, I can't remember their name, are similar. But then what you also have is a very well-known band from our teenagers is competing in Eurovision this year.
Oh, the Rasmus.
Yeah, the Rasmus.
The Rasmus are performing. Do you remember the Rasmus, Jenny?
The name is familiar, but if you said, can you sing a song?
In the shadows.
In the shadows.
Of my life.
Do you remember them?
Yes, this is ringing a bell.
He had feathers in his hair, and I, back in the emo days,
yes.
started picking up feathers to put in my hair because I thought that was really cool.
Takes me
Brilliant.
I'm pretty sure I have the Rasmus CD downstairs somewhere.
Takes me right back.
So a reappearance is coming back then.
Yeah.
A big return.
Yeah. I love it because of the fun and the silliness. And linking back to Father Ted, the person who's the commentator for us here in the UK is Graham Norton, who played a priest in Father Ted. And so it all comes back together.
Yeah.
That is A-star level thought processing.
I think again, it kind of shows how differently the UK embraces Eurovision, because our commentator, he is very snarky. It's very much like sitting with your friends and having that commentary, sort of commentary we will have in our living rooms, where we are commenting on the staging and how surreal this is, and it's fun, but we have that sense of tongue-in-cheek sarcasm involved as well, which is, I think, a very UK thing, but extremely popular. And the way we'll celebrate, I don't know about you two, but you have your Eurovision party, you pick your country to support, you might dress up, you might create a drinking game to go along with it.
I was going to say, are we going to talk about the drinking games that come along with it, where there's a separate game for during the show where you would take a drink. Not that we're condoning binge drinking in any way whatsoever, but you would take a drink for things like pyrotechnics or singing in native language. Is folk instruments is a popular one as well. A costume change is one you might drink for as well.
Anytime the words
and then
for peace are sung.
Yeah. And then during the voting process, if you pick a country, and if your country receives a 10 or a 12, you take a drink as well.
Or if the UK gets nil point. Let's talk about... So we joked about England getting nil point. I've got some things to expect from Eurovision 2022, and this includes something a little bit about our entry. Firstly, I'm going to expect lots of Ukrainian flags and some anti-Russian protest. In previous years, there have been people who've gone up on stage to protest. You don't know, I think, in the crowd.
Yeah, we got protested, didn't we?
So I think in the crowd, definitely, even by some of the performers. I imagine the host country usually does some performances. I think there will be a Ukrainian tribute. I think Ukraine's entry will score exceptionally highly.
Oh, I'm voting for Ukraine.
Kalush Orchestra.
Have Ukraine got a? They've actually got a group in then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're
They
rapping,
are, they're
Jenny.
hip-hop.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for that. I think there's not going to be a dry eye in the house, is there?
And I don't think they'll necessarily win.
Oh, okay.
If they do, they may end up hosting in a different country depending how things have developed by that point.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But I think they are going to score exceptionally highly this year. The UK won't win, let's say that.
No, we
but
won't.
we have
But I am a bit more hopeful.
we've actually got a good song. It's Sam Ryder.
Yeah, Sam Ryder, who is famous on TikTok, and I'm hoping that his reach spans more than the UK, and therefore we might actually get a point.
Yeah, a point
or two.
I
Just
think
one.
the song
One would be great.
is actually quite good. It's called Spaceman. Musically, I quite enjoy it. I think it will be down to a staging. The staging will make or break the song because it's quite chill.
If he doesn't fly through the air at some point, he's gone really badly wrong.
Really needs to embrace the space aspect, have some fun staging. If it's just him singing with smoke and a spotlight, it's not going to do well. Unfortunately, because it is actually a really good song, everyone should go listen to it because it's a good song. Let's just show our support.
So to tie up
it.
all of this, I think one of the big things as well that we need to name and talk about with Eurovision is that there's a massive queer culture associated with it. It is, you often see lots of pride flags waving at it, and there is something gloriously camp and queer about it, and that is something beautiful that we should continue to celebrate.
And there's been lots of discussion because often the acts are more liberal and queer than sometimes the countries that have sent them, and there's been controversies in the past, but it's one of the beautiful things about Eurovision.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's lovely seeing a crowd just feeling free and being who they are, and yeah, it's great. So to round up all of our talking today, we're gonna head back to our true heart, our home of Dibley. And Kate, I believe you've got another episode to pitch for us.
Yes, I've got an episode pitch. I've been thinking about this as I was watching Velveted. I started thinking about what would Geraldine be doing, what would our Dibley episode be doing. So my first thing about this episode is it's not an actual song submission. The reason that Father Ted works is the specific context of the early 90s and Ireland, where they were trying not to win the Eurovision Song Contest. So you can sort of play into the belief that two priests from a remote island in Ireland could go to the Eurovision Song Contest. So, Vicar of Dibley episodes usually have an A plot and a B plot. The A plot is going to be an annual Dibley Eurovision party. So we're keeping it in the village.
Great.
The B plot, I ummed and ahed about this, whether or not this is going to be set now or when only two of the cast members are still remaining of the core Dibley cast. Or
gosh,
we've only got Geraldine and Hugo remaining, tragically.
Oh wow.
Or whether it's set in the heyday.
It's got to be a 90s episode.
I'm afraid I've decided it's now, and this is why. No, you'll guess it. This is why. The B plot is welcoming Ukrainian refugees into Dibley.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, you can't play that card.
We begin with the parish council, and it is a new parish council except for Hugo and Geraldine. This year, they're having their own talent show in Dibley to raise money for Ukrainian refugees. And this is sort of in honour of Alice, who loved the Eurovision Song Contest. So we've got that gut hit right to begin with.
Oh, flipping heck, mate.
I'm just tearing up just thinking about it.
They've decided that they want to renovate some of the empty cottages in the village to welcome refugees into Dibley. And this is why they need to raise money. And they're going to have the Dibley Song Contest, a talent show.
Oh.
So then everyone puts together a performance. Hugo and his many children do a Sound of Music parody. I think we'd have Geraldine and Harry maybe a little Sonny and Cher kind of duet.
Oh, yeah.
I think we have the triumphal return of Reg Dwight.
Yes.
And you'd have to be creative because we are missing a lot of the core original characters, but maybe you'd have relatives of them. And I think there would
and that guy that was big in the gonads.
Yeah, exactly. There would be tributes. You'd have the choir director, McBurney, or whatever his name is.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I feel it in my fingers. Let's have that back.
Yeah.
There is an overwhelming generosity of the villagers donating things, whether that's money, furnishing, or labour. So the cottages are filled and made really nice. But, problem, no one actually knows any Ukrainians to be able to invite over. So that's our problem turning point in the episode. However, Hugo uncovers in his father's records that in his many trips to Europe to link Dibley with villages,
nice.
Dibley was actually linked with a village in Ukraine. And then through these links, through this twinning, by David Horton, they are able to bring people over to live in these new cottages which have been renovated for them. The episode closes with a Eurovision party / the Dibley Song Contest, I'm not quite sure, to welcome these Ukrainian refugees to the village. And right at the end, Elton John turns up because he was inspired by the story which he saw on social media, and both Reg Dwights performed together.
Oh my goodness.
I love it. That's a great idea. I just want a time machine in order that we can get the original cast, because I think Mrs. Cropley singing an ABBA song would be glorious.
Oh, yeah.
You could have a flashback. I'm not sure how they could do it, but you could definitely have a flashback to when they were all dressed up for the summer fair.
Yeah. And I could just see Frank and oh my gosh, his name's come from my head. No. Joe. Frank and Jim doing a making your mind up skirt throw off reveal kind of thing. Oh, that's a really cool idea, Kate. I like it.
Kate, your brain is amazing. How you have the creative, I can't believe that you've written that. I think it's absolutely stunning. Quite frankly, I say exit the priesthood immediately and go into writing.
Well, no,
or at least find a way to do both, because that is exceptional.
Plot, I'm not quite sure about the actual execution. But yeah, no, I think for me, there was that dithering over, yes, you want it to be in the heyday, you want it to be a 90s episode, but there's something, what I always loved about The Vicar of Dibley was there was, and there has been in the more recent episodes, it is in response to things which are happening in the world, and The Vicar of Dibley has become TV's vicar, so we had a special lockdown episodes, we had a Black Lives Matter episode, and there is
Make Poverty
History, and responding to things which are happening in the moment and helping the public respond. And this is actually something, as I was writing this, I thought, you know what, I wish I had this idea 2 months ago so I could have organised a village song contest here. Because one of the beautiful things about our country at the moment, and one of the beautiful things about villages, is a desire to host refugees in our communities. It's something we're working on. Our diocese has a project collaborating with Citizens UK. So that's why the episode I thought of went in that way.
I love it.
And in contrast to all the things that we've said about Father Ted and him being, opportunistic and money grabbing, actually when people work together well and there's the beautiful image that we have in the Bible of the body of Christ, and we're all different parts of the body, and we can't say we don't need you to anyone because we all are connected to each other. Actually, when we come together as a country, or as when we come together in Europe as the song contest and welcome all people, and there are refugees from lots of different countries who are fleeing various different things. It shows the best of us in humanity when we're willing to open arms and show all that love.
Yeah.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Vicar's Watch Dibley. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily represent those of the Church of England or any other organisations with which we are affiliated.
And as always, bless you for listening. I'm throwing a party in space. I was wondering, could you help me plan it?
Oh, nice. Linking in with the space man. Yeah.
Space man.
I'm up in space man. We should enter next year.
Oh dear.
We should.
No.
We should. It would be My Lovely Horse Mark 1 though, that's the problem.